Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Free Agents Podcast. Back for some more pre-agents as we are here today to close out season 4 of the challenge, Real World Road Rules Extreme Challenge. Our two teams have finished competing. One of them has won, and we'll get to that in due time. I, of course, am Matt here alongside Brian Scally. Scally, how's it going?
Hello. I'm so good. I'm so excited to be back here to talk about the last five episodes of this season of the challenge with a little bit of an extended reunion for what I was expecting. So nice to jump into all of this.
Yeah, we were expecting 6 episodes. If we had all 6 episodes, it would have been essentially 7 episodes with a 42-minute reunion, like you said, wasn't expecting. But then one of the episodes, it turns out, is like completely unavailable, and we'll get into that shortly. But so I guess it still ended up being 6 episodes worth of time. But yes, a little bumpy road to get there.
Yeah, I think we also touched on that episode in the reunion, and like I've read a little online, so we know what the mission was.
Well, we may as well just talk about it here at the top before we get into like everything else that we did see. Episode 14 is not available in, well, look, a lot of these
Anywhere, it
episodes are not
seems.
available, but it's not available seemingly anywhere. It's according to Wikipedia, it says that the teams had to dress up as famous duos in a fetish club, and after it was originally aired, it never aired again, ever, anywhere.
I'm kind of upset. Look, we've done the fashion show before to make outfits and dress up, but I'm kind of curious. Like, what was going on?
Not only were we just generally curious, but at the reunion, Julie gets asked about it. She's like, "So, what did your dad think of, or something about like how is she doing with her dad?" And Julie's like, "Well, before that episode aired, everything was fine." But then she's like joking, like, "No, but we're still fine." So obviously, some shit went down there.
Yeah, did they say Cyrus sucked Dan's big toe?
Yes, and now that you're saying that, now I'm remembering that because I was going to say, when did that happen? It must have been in that episode.
Yeah. Did Cyrus get this episode cleared from the internet? Like, where is this?
Either Cyrus or Julie's dad, one or the other. But yeah, Real World won that challenge just like they won every challenge in this back half. Jamie was the MVP. I guess, I don't know. Sucking a toe is not enough to win the MVP in that one. I don't know what the mission was, but so we have no idea what happened there. It's a mystery.
For all we know, Jamie sucked everybody's toes. So, we have no idea.
Yeah, and look, from the way that they were talking to Jamie and about Jamie at the reunion, everybody probably would have enjoyed that. I did not realize Jamie was such a heartthrob, but also we talked about the facial hair. I don't know if it's exactly a soul patch. I mean, I think it's basically that. Just wasn't working, at least for me, throughout the episodes that we were watching him on. At the reunion, it's gone, and I'm like, okay, I can see it.
Yeah, no, Jamie is he's a handsome man. I did remember from his Real World season.
He was hiding it, at least for me. And yeah, so that's the Jamie update. That's maybe the only Jamie update that you'll get. But congratulations to the Real World team, the first time that they have come out of this challenge arena victorious.
Yeah, and right as we're about to switch to a couple different formats where it's not exactly Real World versus Road Rules, like as a big giant team, exactly. So nice of them to get one under their belt before we start adding in eliminations and the like. So a nice welcome switch up. They all talked about at the reunion how like Dan was working out every single day with a trainer. I think it was a Marine. And they were like all took this really, really, really seriously, whereas Road Rules may have not as much this time around. I wonder if that was almost on purpose in casting or not.
I'm gonna guess not. I can't imagine like they were, only 4 seasons in and saying like we really got to get Real World. Like, I mean, production today is absolutely saying like, what can we do to get Nani or Leroy or Anissa their win? But I don't think that they were at this point saying what can we do to get the Road Rules team. I'm sorry, the Real World team a win. Who
Yeah,
knows?
honestly.
We're, of course, by the end of this episode, going to update our Mount Rushmore. So stay tuned all the way to the end for that. We're going to talk through the Mount Rushmore of this season and update the men's and the women's Mount Rushmore overall, updating it if we're adding anybody into it from this season. But just like looking at the results overall here, the Road Rules team, I feel like, does worse than you would have expected. There's like some talk about how the women are not as strong as the women on the Real World team. But like overall, I'm not like looking at this Road Rules team thinking, oh, this is surely a disaster. They have the most competitive person in the game on their team. And just overall, it just things fell apart. Communication wasn't there, as we're going to very clearly see in, one or two specific missions in this part. It's just, I don't know what went wrong.
Yeah, it's funny because as much as Susie wanted to win, I do kind of look at her as the weakest link on this team. At present day, or at the time of recording, she obviously becomes much more of a little bit of a beast as we go forward. But I think that you can look at Latarian, who's been very strong on many seasons that we've seen. James obviously does very well at points, and yet they're still saying Christian was the MVP. So it seems like all of them had it covered. And I didn't really have an issue with anything Michelle and Emily were doing outside of maybe Emily's competitive spirit wasn't quite always there towards the end, but in general,
I have
not
to
too bad.
imagine you were able to tell Emily and Michelle apart by the end, because Emily does end up getting a little bit of an arc throughout at least an episode.
Kind of. Look, it's a
Okay,
blurry screen. If this
by
was
the
like
reunion, she had black hair.
kind of no, yeah, I
um,
could tell then. It was a dark brown, but I would say it got better. I don't know if the hair changed up a little or what, but look, we are not watching in HD. Okay, it's not perfect all the time.
Fair. And I don't know. I genuinely thought it was like the color black. I feel like Sarah Rice also dyes her hair like a very specific black, and it was giving me that at a certain point.
Mm.
Not to get into the details of Emily's hair color, but also it sometimes is blurry, like you said. But oh, by the way, just to say this before I forget about it, the reunion episode, the amount of times that like the blurry VHS tape lines were there, incredible.
Yeah, that was very funny where it would just like completely cut to black and just like, like you
Like
could hear the
fully
static.
fully the VCR, having a mistake in it along the way. I was like, oh, what a time and place. I love this. But where should we go? Should we get into any specific stories? Do you want to talk through some big missions, little missions?
Ooh, let's talk about. I think we can wrap up Rebecca and James because it comes up a little bit here, but it's not the biggest storyline. How does this finish out?
Yeah, and I'm curious where we're going to go with the discussion, not to get too ahead of ourselves, of course, with like either of these two or both of these two, like when it comes to a Mount Rushmore. Because I'm sitting there thinking, we're on the fourth time we're doing the Mount Rushmore, and I feel like a lot of showmances have made their way there. So I'm like, does just being in a showmance get you to the Mount Rushmore? So more on that to come later. But as far as Rebecca is concerned, or both of them are concerned, it's very funny that just the storyline throughout the entire season ends up being James is competitive. Rebecca's on the winning team. They kind of like each other, and that's it. And Rebecca made that turn very early on to say, maybe I don't like James as much because there's a different side of him that I'm seeing. That kind of faded away. The fears that she had behind his competitive nature, she was starting to see it as more of an endearing aspect. And then by the time we get all the way to the reunion and where are you guys now, it's like, oh, we don't live near each other, but we're still very good friends. I'm like, well, that's kind of exactly what I would have expected.
Yeah, they're very good friends. James does say like we like each other in that romantic way or something. So like I feel like it's just a case of long distance is hard. I do think that the James and Rebecca relationship had the same exact correlating ups and downs as to when Road Rules was winning missions versus losing them. I would say at the beginning, like, she thought he was kind of a brat. And then, oh, look, they start winning and he has a good attitude again. Oh, and then they're losing again. And like, it just has little peaks and valleys, but they lost so much at the end. She very much is now back on. James is just like sullen all the time and he's not talkative. And he even says, like, I don't want to talk to Rebecca. I don't want to talk to my team. I don't want to talk to anyone. Like, just I lost and I just want to I self-isolate, and that's not going to work for a little showmance here.
Yeah. By the way, Rebecca's a rock star. James was like, yeah, we're just both busy, and Rebecca's out there being a rock star. And then I was like, I see it in the look a little bit, but I'm
I could see.
curious
I could
into
see.
the career of Rebecca after this season because it's not on the challenge. She's one of our one and dones, but who knows? Um, I don't know that we can get too deep into honestly any of the rest of the discussion here without talking about the paintball mission because a lot of it has to do with James's remaining story, and I have a lot to say about James tied into that.
Okay, let's talk about this paintball mission.
Okay, great. So it is episode 16.
The
Yeah,
end of episode 15 that they started.
yes, going into episode 16. It's called Operation Human Shield. And there's, of course, a couple other missions that we'll talk about from this batch of episodes as well. But this one is a big one. It goes from one episode into like another mini challenge in another episode. I have questions about why that happened in such a way, and also if that was planned in such a way. But of course, like the bigger storyline is what goes down at this paintball challenge where we have both teams competing. As mentioned, paintball's involved. One player from each team is supposed to be elected as the as like do they have a name of the player? Just like the chosen one or something like that.
I don't know.
Um, and then the chosen one needed to be protected by two other teammates that were literally blocking them with their bodies as they
Human
ran across a
shields.
field, human shields, to go knock themselves into a target or at least hit the target, and then that would be locking in their time. Whichever team locked in the time, the fastest time was the winner. But along the way, the other team is shooting you with paintballs, and every time that you get hit with one, it adds time to your score. Drama comes in, Scally.
So much drama. And this feels like kind of a crappy mission, maybe the last minute replacement for the one that they talked about where they were potentially going to do human skeet shooting where they catapulted someone into the air and then shot them with paintballs, but the cast refused to do. So we have this mission that seems not all that well thought out, and it seems to manifest in such a way where this was going to go wrong. We first get Jamie stepping like out from the area he was supposed to be behind in order to get a better shot, potentially shooting past the clock. And so Road Rules decides, you know what, real world cheated as they think they have been doing this whole season. We're going to cheat too. And James unloads his like entire clip of paintballs after the timer goes out, and Cyrus gets very frustrated at this.
To say the least. It's both teams that are going to, I guess, claim that they were at fault when all is said and done. But the drama in the moment, probably, and I'm talking like a season that we just saw, the Ayana drama. Probably the most drama that we've seen on camera thus far,
Yeah.
unless I'm forgetting something major, where Cyrus and James are like in each other's faces. Because I mean, look, this isn't just like, oh, you did me dirty in a challenge. You were hitting me with paintballs. Like you had your paintball gun loaded, aimed at my head, and you were shooting off paintballs at me after the challenge was over. We were done and you were still going. That's going to get you fired up. I can't blame Cyrus whatsoever.
Yeah, Cyrus like grabs his collar. Camila jumps in the middle. It's like, we're not doing this. And this gets obviously very heated. They decide that no one will win the $10,000. And James is pissed. Real world is annoyed, culminating in which they decide that the next mission, I guess this must have been thrown together as a solution. They're going to try the case because the footage is inconclusive. Let's go to New York City, to the New York City courthouse. Been here for jury duty. Don't want to see it again. But they're going to try the case of who deserves the $10,000.
That's like the question, of course, here is, how did they have this planned? Was it planned? Because they go to New York. They're all the way in somewhere in England. I don't remember exactly where. And then they end up, after this, they go to California. I'm like, they really just had these people traveling everywhere. And I'm like, I hope they didn't go to New York just for this little like mini mission, which was compelling drama. Very unexpectedly so, because what you end up seeing is the entire Road Rules team doesn't want to compete. They are so traumatized, or at least some of them are, by what happened at that mission. And I think like again, I have so many questions about like what exactly that trauma was for them. Was it the fact that they were taking these paintball guns and continuously shooting their friends with them? At the end of the day, these people like do form friendships with one another just in the sake of like winning some money. And that's where, to bring it back to why I was saying I want to talk about this with James, is like this guy is like the number one competitive person on the show here. Like his whole thing is being competitive. And then we see in this challenge, he's just like, I don't want to do this. I know there's money on the line. We could still win it. But I don't want to be a part of this, because he's feeling such a certain type of way about how the mission went down the first time in the first place.
Yeah, and I think that it ties back into another mission where Emily feels like the judging was unfair, so she completely walks off and refuses to do it. And I think that at this point, as they discussed in the reunion, and I was surprised that they so openly discussed it, because
Mm-hmm.
maybe current challengers should take note.
Mm-hmm.
Road Rules says they completely lost faith in production. They lost the trust. They really did not think that like their best interest was had anymore. They didn't think it was fair. And so James is looking at this court case, and they watch the tape. It does not look like it is going to be just like a very easily discussed manner, especially with James coming away clean. He knows that Real World's entire case is going to be just absolutely dragging him, probably cross-examining him. And he's like, I don't blame him for seeing a scenario in which this episode all becomes, look at that asshole James up there.
Yeah, totally fair. Just to like go back very quickly on like the production thing, it is insane. This reunion segment, you would never see this ever at any modern
Nope.
challenge. Like, what are you gonna have like Natalie Anderson come out and be like, well, yeah, so I think it's kind of crazy that production let me on the season in the first place, even though I was pregnant, or like anybody else that is in that category from
Yeah.
recent years. But like it wasn't just like in this one challenge. They were basically saying that the whole season they didn't feel like production had their backs or was keeping them safe or was giving fair judging, just like a bunch of various criticisms about production, as if like this reunion special isn't being put on. I mean, it was being hosted by two hosts, two former contestants that weren't a part of this season, but still, the production team here is of the Real World Road Rules Challenge. It was just insane.
Yeah. It was definitely interesting. Those two hosts, I guess, before we forget, being Mark Long. So, good for Mark getting his little showing here. And Melissa Howard from Real World New Orleans. Do you know Melissa?
Not yet, but I know I will. She
Oh
is
my
a
God.
future challenger.
Queen. Love her. So
I mean, she
excited.
was fun here. Yeah.
I love her. She is the person who had like a lot of the discussions with Julie on her original season.
Uh,
So big fan of Melissa, but in this challenge, that they had lost faith, it does end up playing out where the real world team comes in. Rebecca does the opening statement of the case and kind of flops. She's not really super well prepared, so she is contradicting herself. And oh my God, this judge was such a classic like TV court judge. I hated him.
I
I
mean,
hate TV court judges. They're assholes. They just are the worst. I really do not like them.
especially when he
And
drops the line that was like, I've sentenced people to death, so this is nothing. Like, okay, great, good.
okay, murderer.
Yeah, like
Congrats.
that's that's definitely the flex you think it is. But anyway,
Yeah. So bizarre. I don't know. I don't like the like I'm paid and only I'm motivated by money to just be an asshole and like intimidate people on this, especially when it's like actual cases. Um, but I think that Rebecca kind of flops. Latarian, as the team decided, the Road Rules team, sorry, that they are not going to do this. They're all going to support James, except for Latarian, who says, like, I can't walk away from this. Like, I believe this. I'm going to go in there and do it myself. And he does a really good job. He argues that because both teams broke the rules, it should ultimately come down to who got there faster. They can't determine how many of the paintballs hit each player after the time allotted. So you have to disqualify the paintball portion of the mission and go to the raw facts. And it looks like Latarian would have won this challenge had his team just even sat in the room.
Exactly. And it's just a very interesting dynamic with this whole setup where Letarian didn't necessarily agree at first when the team had this idea in the first place, but he didn't like go out of his way to put his foot down and disagree. And it even comes to a point where the Road Rules team calls the real world team and asks them to come meet with them, and they discuss how they're feeling about it and say, can we both agree to not do this mission? Can we both back out of it? And that way, it can't happen, which obviously seems like it's worked one or two other times on this season, with, like you were saying, that Dan was talking about the other version of a paintball challenge that just didn't end up actually happening. And so the real world team here is like, that's kind of cute of you guys to suggest that, because we've got a really good case going. And if you're all, basically how they're feeling is like, well, if they're already checked out of it, there's still money on the line here, and we're very easily going to win this if they choose not to participate. So they end up, Road Rules does not get the support from Real World that they're looking for here. And when Letarian goes back to, when the whole team goes back to their quarters or whatever, Letarian at that point is like, well, let me just keep watching the game tape and keep taking some notes just in case. And he's still getting encouraged by Christian to not do it. He's like, let's just stick together with our team and be united, because this team is having such a hard time staying united. So they finally found something to be united about, not competing in this. But Letarian, as you mentioned, is going to end up being their MVP, because he's the not truly the MVP in the challenge. There wasn't one. But even the judge basically gives him like a fist bump afterwards to say, like, you did a very good job defending your case, even though nobody else showed up.
Yeah, the judge gives him the gavel, says like, you were the best of the day, but like unfortunately your team didn't show up. I can't do anything about that. And when he goes out, Dan even says like, Letarian crushed us, he did so well. And was it Michelle who was like, that's cute that you did really well, but we as a team decided we weren't doing this and you went against that? Where I'm like, did Libertarian agree? Is he not a member of the team who has to agree to this? Like, just because you all say something doesn't mean I have to do that.
Imagine you like showed up, like whether it's you as someone's lawyer or you just show, whatever the case is, like Letarian showed up for their team. I get that they decided they didn't want to do it, but he advocated for them to win and to get money in their pockets when they needed that money more than they have the entire season, because they were still losing things. And then he's getting shit for it when he gets back. Like, oh, you know what? But we said we weren't gonna. Like, you
Oh,
all stink.
you all decided that I was going to give up $10,000. Oh, yeah, let me just do that. Like, no.
So insane. But the again, the emotions were so high. I mean, we talked about James and how he was feeling. He said it was the worst day of the trip. He cried afterwards. And Cyrus makes a joke about that to us, being like, get off your silver spoon. Like, what do you, this is the worst day of your life, a day that like we had a tough mission on the challenge. And Emily was also saying that she cried watching the tape back, just like, I don't know. I can't, I really don't think I got a good sense from them as to what exactly was setting them off in such a way, but it obviously it was.
And I think that that probably is a reflection of also like James's reaction that he receives when he is on TV versus like Cyrus or someone else, where I'm sure that Cyrus is just open to more criticism on the daily, where James was like the golden boy, and now he is like, oh my god, I might get criticism. And well, welcome.
Right.
Welcome to criticism.
Yep. Let's kind of keep it on Emily for a second here. And I think it's the medieval challenge that is the one where
Yes.
Emily is going to also have issues with, just in line of like having issues with production decisions. Not that this person here is, well, I guess this person was production, probably the host in challenge history, the number one host, to not know what they were doing the most and to be the least confident in anything that was going on here.
Yeah, this was not the medieval, but the like extreme sports one
Oh,
in
like, am I mixing them
episode.
up?
Yeah.
Okay.
In episode 13, they go and they're in Germany.
Yes.
The host is like, "I'm so sorry, my English isn't great." Sounded fine, but she's like, "We do bungee jumping off of there. You're not doing that today. We're doing other stuff." And so they have to do a series of missions, one of which is like you pedal a bike which like raises itself to the ceiling, goes pretty smoothly. And though another one is called house running, in which you are walking down the side of a building. And the really controversial round of the day is Julie versus Emily, where Emily is beating Julie running down the side of this building, but Julie loses her balance because she blames the belayer on holding it too tight. And so she basically just lets herself fall down the side of the building into the mattress and beats Emily. But was it against the rules? Was it not? Question mark.
And that's again what so much of the real world, the road rules team was taking issue with the real worlders throughout the entire challenge, because the real world team just kept finding little ways to, as they were calling it, like cheat the system, even if it wasn't actually cheating. And look, we're going to get years later, and unfortunately, who made the phrase or whatever that, all's fair in love, war, and challenges. It's kind of true as the seasons go on, even if it maybe shouldn't always be, but it is very often. If you're not trying everything you can to win a challenge, as long as it is not told to you that it's not in the rules, you do it. And so Julie literally was ready to jump off this building and sacrifice herself for the win of the challenge. Not actually, but like you said, she just falls. She just is rappelling down the building and just allows herself to fall, which makes her go much faster all the way down to the cushion. And of course, again, this does not make Emily very happy, because Emily was doing the task properly. Julie just YOLO'd it.
Yeah. And Julie's argument, which I think holds up on like a Survivor, probably a Big Brother, is, well, this wasn't against the rules that you outlined, so I should win. And I think that was the ruling at first. But now, from what I've heard of Amazing Race, and here it's kind of like, oh, we didn't say it, but this is what we meant. So that's how we're going to rule based off of it.
This poor woman that's hosting just did not know what to do with all of these complaints coming her way. We don't have a host, we don't have a TJ to go through production. It's this woman is the one going through production.
Yeah. And so Emily is like, I'm walking off set. I'm not doing this. This is unfair. They even say, okay, you know what? Emily threw a big fit like a little baby. We will go ahead and redo the round. It's the most fair thing to do. We will more clearly articulate the rules so that just dropping yourself off is against the rules. You have to run down the side of the building. Your feet have to make contact. And Emily refuses. She says, it's the principle of things. I'm not doing this again. You can't make me. And I'm surprised that they just awarded no points. I think this should be a forfeit.
I mean, yeah, they clearly did not know what they were going to do with, having they at any point during these challenges so far. Do they not know? Like, they don't know what to do when the contestants all do come together and say, we're taking a stand against you. Because in modern challenges, it would be like, all right, so you're all punished in some kind of capacity. But here it's just very different, because whether it's about the integrity of the rules, I guess, or sometimes it has to do with their safety. And I mean, to be a little fair, production is still figuring out as well, but like, there's money on the line, there's people's lives on the line that like they're going to take very seriously. So again, you can just see very often how unprepared production was for some of the things that come up along the way, and I'm sure learn from that as well. But yeah, it ends up being that Emily not competing in that doesn't get them the points that she was so confident she would have been able to get if they did run the challenge back. So she chose not to run it back and not to get those points. And then at the end, there's like a third part of this challenge where it's pretty close. Like the point system was confusing, but basically it was another one of those, just like try to drop something into a target, as you're getting launched into the air, classic stuff. And the teams were so close that they were getting very nervous that it was going to come down to like having needed Emily's points. I think it did not, right? That it was, I think Dan for Real World ended up doing really well. And so it wouldn't have mattered, but it was close.
Yeah, they go on, like the slingshot rides at amusement parks and fairs, where it just like tightens the tension on a bungee cord and just throws you into the air.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not by like 1-2 points like usual, so you stay in the middle. It's just by like 1. So kind of shocked they didn't just go straight into the crane. But instead, they go pretty high in the air and are forced to throw a water balloon on a target. Almost every single person just throws it in a completely random direction, except for Laterian, who gets 10 points, and Dan, who actually gets pretty close to the center of the target, getting 50 points, locking in another win for the Real World.
Mm-hmm. And Rebecca was the MVP because of the bike portion of it that you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
As you mentioned earlier, yeah, why not? She won a Palm Pilot. Do you remember Palm Pilots or hearing about them?
I'm too young. Do you?
No, I'm also
No, I
too
do.
young. No, I really don't. Like I like the name stands out to me. I'm like I feel like I should, and then I was trying to like look it up. It was a like mini computer.
Yeah, my dad had one. It was like a kind of like pre-tablet thing.
Yeah, I mean that's what it was like looking like, but I was like, what do you do with this thing? Like
It was like
I
for scheduling.
okay,
It was like
sure.
note taking and scheduling. I just remember him having one. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, it just was next to the
Never used
beeper.
it. Kinda, yeah. He had a beeper when he was a fireman.
Love it. But a lot of this challenge highlighted the Emily versus Julie feud, which was kind of like giving me shades of like Veronica versus Maya, that like wasn't a super important thing throughout like that season and this one, same here, but like just kind of like, hey, just so we're not getting a ton of interpersonal relationships, good or bad, with this cast, but here's one: these two don't love each other.
Yeah, like okay. Well, they're not big fans. Like, okay, can I know why? No.
And then they go shopping and they're fine.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yep, that's it. So they talked a little bit about their relationship at the reunion, and Emily was basically just like, "Yeah, I mean, we're both really competitive, and we're on opposite teams, so just that's how it was."
I love when they're like, "Did you guys ever get to work it out?" And Julie's like, "Yeah, well, I won." So that was the conclusion. Like, the
um,
personal skills on Julie are not the best.
yeah. Emily was talking about also at the reunion how she like watched some of the stuff back and she realized how kind of like immature she was being at times, and she still feels like she has some growing to do. So, you love to hear someone with that perspective on themselves. But
Nice.
it was just a lot of tension between these two teams.
Definitely. Now, what did you think of the as for the previously mentioned gross out games, the medieval themed challenge?
Yeah, hard to follow this one and the final mission. I believe, yeah, the race cars, race cars. Is that race? Yeah, race cars.
I mean, cars that were used for racing.
Yeah, that. Both of those missions in those episodes were like going so fast. Like I get like in the finale why they were speeding through it, speeding car
Uh-huh,
puns, love it.
uh-huh.
Because they had like so much to show, I guess, in the final episode. But in this one too, I was just having a hard time following along, other than I guess the eel portion where it was like, okay, this is very clear, we're just playing some Fear Factor games.
I mean, like they were all pretty simple in like the mission of the mission, but they were not like clearly playing out on television. It's like, okay, there's a scrap eating contest and someone wins. Okay, there's a needle in a haystack and someone wins. Like, oh, sure.
Yeah, the haystack that had like cow manure and other intestines and hearts and brains and whatnot
Who
from animals is kind of gross.
who accidentally put organs in the haystack? How'd this happen? Like, manure seems unlikely, but like I guess it could have happened. Organs?
Yeah. The real world team really did benefit in a lot of different ways from across the season. We're going to see at the reunion, Jamie and Cyrus get highlights. Jamie is just like this well rounded overall competitor that is great at everything. Cyrus had the heart to like do well in every single mission. And Julie gets some highlight as well throughout, like, the whole season, but here in this mission, because she was willing to eat or do literally anything. And Susie pretty much gave up on the eating portion of the challenge, being like, we are up against Julie, we have no chance.
Oh yeah, she fully quit there in the eel bath. It's like Julie, you have to go. Not Julie. Like Julie actually not murders the eels, but does murder the eel bath competition. Susie is like, Susie, you got to go under 10 seconds. Like that's all you have, and just is flailing around, absolutely terrified in that eel bath. It's so interesting. Like I don't think that Susie stands out as a character in this season almost at all, but outside of the fact that I am comparing her to her later appearances.
Mm-hmm. I mean, she gets a lot of confessionals, I feel like, for the amount of time that she's there.
Yeah.
I feel like you're meant to be a fan of her when she comes in. Just like, girl next door vibes that really has, put her heart into the game. But being on the losing team and, it's really just like trying to be their cheerleader, like from within, and it doesn't go anywhere. But I don't know. I feel like we, in the last episode, of course, we like took a bunch of people out of consideration from where we thought that they would be towards Mount Rushmore. I still feel like Susie doesn't end up on there, but I feel like she's towards the higher end, over at least like your Michelle's and Jamie's.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, and then we had bug spitting here.
This was so stupid. Like, put a bug in your mouth and spit it one time, and whoever goes faster wins. Further. One time. Okay, we're not doing heats.
Yep, just once. But the bigger highlight here is what even gets brought into the reunion. Rebecca talking about how she was raised to not be a spitter. I don't think she realized until the reunion that people were gonna laugh at that.
Yeah, Rebecca's like, because in her normal life, she's no spitter.
Yeah,
Like, whoa,
I was like,
okay.
okay, great, love that. Like, whatever,
I
great.
I love
And
how
then
open people were in the 90s or 2000s.
the reunion comes along, and she again talks about not being a spitter, and everyone is laughing, and she's like, "Oh yeah."
There was a couple moments like this. Like I think Ayana just keeps talking past one, but she's like talking about like balls in her mouth, and everyone's just like giggling as she just continues her
Yep,
sentence.
yep. I mean, it's not a joke back then. So I don't know
Yeah,
like why the two of them would have been blindsided by the laughter, but
yeah. I don't know.
anyway. um, do you have anything else from that one, or you want to talk about the race cars?
No, let's talk about these the cars that they race in.
The cars that he raced in, yeah. And they were talking about this. I needed them to say it 1,000 times before I eventually just opened up a Google tab and Googled what is Le Mans, what? It's called a Le Mans race, Le Mans race, something like that. And this is just a thing in the racing world that I did not know anything about, but
Sure.
basically just driving cars very fast and doing a bunch of scary tricks.
Yeah. I was surprised that they're all doing the 360 into a parking spot. Like these people are not Edward Cullen. They do not have those driving skills. I was very impressed that so many of them got it done immediately. It looks very fun, but like, why aren't they flipping? That seems scary. So they are going to be driving the Toyota Celicas and doing the 360-degree spins, doing a couple laps with like changing a tire, right, as a pit crew, and mostly smoothly.
And just to get to the final score of all of this, it looked, did I take my notes correctly? They were separated by 1 point.
That's what it seems like. Yeah,
Yeah.
they had Real World was trailing by 15 points going into the last portion, giving them 15 seconds that they had to make up behind the Road Rules team. And Emily, who was apparently a very good driver and, one of the top two on the Road Rules team, takes apparently 16 seconds too long, giving Real World the final $10,000 of the main missions, not the final.
I think if we had like anti MVP on like awards on the season, Emily and James would get a lot of them.
Yeah, I do think that it's not a great showing from Emily in these final stretch of
Yeah, kind of
episodes.
rough. Emily is, and we'll get to this also in due time. I've said this before, I believe, and I'll say it again. The only person from this cast that will come back next season.
Ooh, there we go.
So we have returnees coming up from previous challenges. The only one from this season to make it to season 5 from season 4 is Emily. So I guess she really needed that redemption. By the end of that part of the mission here, or this mission, Real World was now up 110K to 40K for the Road Rules team.
It's a tough split. It's definitely a tough split. I don't think that we've seen a blowout quite like this, even. Road Rules team has won, but I think that the Real World team, like, I don't know if there was as much of an opportunity for it to be so heavy handed, but uh, Real World is crushing.
Mm-hmm. And before we are done talking about missions, we do have one more. And our guest host from the first couple of episodes is back.
I think we got to credit Ramona as like the yeah, the host of the season at this point.
Can she be on the Mount Rushmore?
Honestly, more airtime than some of the, like Jamie. So
Yeah, Ramona is back, our Survivor Borneo contestant, and as we talked about, these players, all this back then, legends in not just like probably a little bit beyond the reality TV world, but certainly within the reality TV world. Ramona is back. She was hosting the first couple of challenges in the first couple of episodes, and she's back here to get them all set up. They have their ultimate handsome reward that's going to be up for grabs, and that is the cars. They're going to be playing for, I think it was a bunch of Toyotas, and not the ones that they were racing in, but ones that they will actually be able to have taking home. What's funny, we talked in the earlier part of the season about one of the prizes was the Jeep package that wasn't actually a Jeep, but this time, no cheaping out. They're cheaping out. They're actually playing for cars.
Yeah, Toyota Celicas, they will be yours if you can complete this mission, as hosted by the fourth boot of Survivor that we're all really excited to see, which is so
Legend.
funny. Stan Ramona, I like her. But this has, what are apparently two as close to identical courses as you can get. There will be no gas put in the car. You have to push this car up until the point that you can get to the gas canisters and then run alongside it for the mission. And real world runs as a team, everyone pushing this car. And I think was it Cyrus that was pushed steering from the outside, whereas Susie not really up to the running. She's gonna sit there and they gotta push Susie's weight alongside the car.
Yep, just another instance of not a lot of love for Susie in these challenges. She was put in the spot specifically because she's seen as the worst competitor on the team, and yeah, so ultimately ends up in another real world win. It was really hot out, so both teams seemed like they were struggling, but real world ultimately is going to be crowned the official winners, not only of the challenge but of these Toyotas, and yeah.
Yeah, I think for the first time, I think Road Rules loses their entire pot.
Yeah, so I saw that just as like a a little bullet point on the Wikipedia page. It says Road Rules lost the final challenge, therefore losing their entire bank. But for winning the Human Foosball Challenge, Christian, Emily, and James all got $1,000 each. I thought at the reunion though that they had said something about like because they were asking the real worlders what you guys did with all your money, and then they asked Road Rules. I thought they said like with your $500 each or something. I don't know what they said.
The $1,000 each for the foosball mission,
Was
maybe?
it just that them that they were asking? I guess,
I
but
guess so.
that is wild. I mean, they were obviously in a different time. I would imagine it was still similar that you get paid to come on the show, even if you're not taking home prize money.
Yeah. I mean, an appearance fee is probably really low back then, to
Yeah,
be
but
honest.
something.
Yeah. I mean, not a lot. Not $19,000 like the real worlders took home plus a car.
Hmm. Plus an additional $1,000 for Dan, Julie, and Rebecca for the foosball.
So
So
true.
not bad. The end of the episode before we get to like fully into the reunion did feature a little bit of a commercial at the end with Avril Lavigne's "I'm With You" music video playing, and it
Iconic.
sent me to another galaxy. My goodness,
That's funny
was
because the show feels older than that song.
I don't know. I
It
guess.
does. To me,
Sure. To you.
personally.
Sure. Great. And then I was gonna also flag up just while I was watching the end of the episode, I was like, oh look, Ayana's getting some confessionals in the end of the season montage. I
Oh.
was like, I wonder, you know, what that means. And then of course she's at the reunion too. So unlike a lot of challenges today, where if you get sent home, you're not going to be invited to the reunion, Ayana was, and she got to share her story, which I thought was really important.
Yeah, I am very happy that they did discuss it and gave Ayana space to talk about it, where she clarifies she did punch Christian, whatever, but she does not regret it. People don't know like how they would have reacted if their buttons were pushed and whether that button be the same as Ayana's or different. That was her, sticking point today. And even Christian is like, he says if he knew that signing up for the challenge meant that someone else would get kicked off, like he never would have done it. And so he really has like regrets about it. He is like still very apologetic, and him and Ayana don't seem to have talked all that much, but it seems like a semi good resolution, at least between like the two of them coming out of this.
Yeah, I did find it strange that, the way that it was talked about from, I think, sorry, I'm forgetting Melissa. I keep wanting to say Michelle. She was like, but like, Ayana, that Christian didn't mean what he said in a hurtful way, right? And I'm like, Ayana has no reason to feel that way. And also to
Well,
like, like, don't put her on the spot like that.
especially because it surprised me. Now, going back to the Real World New Orleans, in which Melissa is on, there is an episode specifically about how a tour guide uses the N word, in not talking about a person, but in like, I don't know, talking about the tour, and it is like a very large, like portion of the episode where Melissa is very offended by it, rightfully so, and is frustrated because her roommates don't understand it. And so I was surprised that where she has a seemingly pretty different attitude here. Now I wonder how much of that is like MTV feeding her questions, frankly. But it was a surprising way that it came here.
Yeah. Yeah. Ayana just responded to that like very unsure of it seemed like she didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
Because why would you? It was just strange. And also like Christian getting like the crowd going, oh, when he was talking about like feeling bad, he wouldn't have come if he knew someone was going to get kicked off. I'm like, okay, can we not like just completely forget what he did and said, to get us to that place? And the awes as if it was like completely, he's a completely sympathetic figure in all of this. I was like, we can, but also different time. I know, I understand.
Yeah, but like shouldn't be.
Of course.
It's just, yeah.
I just like would have to hope and imagine that the audience would not have given those awes today, or for much longer after, but that's that.
Yeah.
Ayana also talked about how she lost several family members after she got home. The fact that it was more than one, the fact that it was one in the first place is devastating, but more than one is just horrible. And so she's been, going through a lot. Again, I'm glad that she was even able and willing to show up, let alone the fact that they had her here for the reunion.
Yeah, I think that, when she was leaving, she said, like, maybe there's a reason why I have to go back. Like, maybe there's a reason why I need to leave right now.
Yeah.
And I don't obviously know the timeline of everything, but like, maybe that was true. She loses multiple family members on top of already having lost her mom very recently. So I think that Ayana, as she says, like, it helped put this situation into perspective. Like, having left the challenge early, who cares?
Mm-hmm. And did we mention this at all yet about Christian was donating money to Ayana's theater organization on campus?
Oh, no, I don't think we actually talked about that yet.
So just like that's another part of the story here, but it comes up later in the episode again when they were being asked what they all did with the money. So obviously this is very nice that Christian is doing this. I now again am confused about where the money's coming from because Ayana says it's a substantial amount of money he's donating. He only seemingly won $1,000 on the challenge. Maybe he's donating all of it, but I don't know.
Maybe he comes from money. We don't know.
Definitely possible. Who knows? But the rest of them were like, oh yeah, I paid my phone bills. I went to Chili's. So that was that. And then on the real world side of things, Julie was like, yeah, I'm working on a website with her $19,000. That's what she's doing with her money. Working on a website.
I would kill to know what that website is. I want to check it right now and see its status.
Dan was putting money into some stocks, typical stuff there. Can we talk about Dan?
Sure. What do you want to say?
Dan, another person that I don't love the way that their story was handled at the reunion. I'm glad he got a chance to speak out for himself. He talks about the way that he was responding to the real world team, the road rules team during the cheers. If you listened to the second part and heard us talking through the different cheers when they called Dan a drama queen. I don't think I noticed the first time, but he noticed and his team noticed that they were like, hanging their wrist down. What's like limp wrist or whatever.
I did not notice this either.
Technical term for that. Is there a technical term for that?
I was gonna
say. And Dan was very upset with that, feeling like they were mocking him, not just like calling him a drama queen, but talking about his sexuality. So after that mission, he didn't really speak to the other team very much, and he was holding it against them because he was hurt. And even though I think he was saying Emily was like apologetic, saying she didn't, they didn't mean it that way, it didn't seem like anybody actually cared enough to like come truly make it up to him.
I mean, in what way do they mean it? Like,
yeah, they definitely meant it that way. They just didn't know, they didn't know, offend him.
Yeah. Interesting.
There was also there was another part with Dan. When they were talking about James, I think, being such a heartthrob.
Yeah.
And they were asking Dan, they were like, oh yeah, you had a lot of things to say about James, and you even got him naked at one point. Like anything about that? And Dan just didn't seem like he was comfortable to have that conversation.
Well, it's just also like a weird conversation where you put like one queer person on TV and then are like, weren't you just pining after all the straight men on the show because we gave you no one to talk to? Like, okay, thanks. Great. That sounds awesome.
Right. It's like he talked, here and there, like he wasn't like necessarily hiding himself, but just like that being the way that the conversation went and not having, like you said, like anything to do with him, just like all about this hot straight man, was interesting.
Yeah, I think that is largely a way that queer characters were used on television, was
Hmm.
like as an accessory to discuss the attractiveness of the like person that they wanted to prop up as a heartthrob.
Yeah. Which also was Jamie, who they asked Jamie boxers or briefs. And he says, I'm actually freeballing right now.
Congratulations, Jamie. Great.
What else from the reunion here? A couple more worthwhile topics of conversation. Anything you specifically want to get to?
Um, I mean, they talk about. I actually really like James's joke where they were like, "Oh, James, like you were so competitive. How did you feel about like losing?" He's like, "Oh, actually, we threw it for the bookies. Like, what's $10,000 when you could be betting on Road Rules losing?" So look at how big the challenge was back then. That people were taking bets in Vegas.
Yeah, he was like, Susie, you thought she was bad. She was just throwing it. We were all throwing.
Yep, yep.
Um, and they were talking about the ropes challenge with Susie and Dan both having a hard time and all of that stuff. Camila was asked about the tension between the two teams. She made a comment about how she and Susie were good friends out there, but like for the last 2 weeks of the show, they barely looked at each other because the tension was so high between the teams, which I was like, wow, that is some tension.
Yeah, I do feel like there was quite a bit. I mean, you could sense it where even, Susie at points was like, let's have a pep talk. And James was like, I don't want to talk. But then James would give a pep talk and it would be like the most aggressive pep talk I've ever, like, stop yelling at me. So the tensions were high.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of tensions being high, they talked, of course, about the paintball mission, and Cyrus is basically like, yeah, I mean, I was gonna, act the way that I did, or I was gonna get activated, I should say, because I got hit in the head with the paintball. And I still have like a mark on my head to show for it.
Fair.
But basically there's no bad blood now, so all's good.
Nice.
Um, the MVPs, they give out MVPs to the two different team, or they give them the option to name MVPs. The real world picks Jamie or Cyrus. As we talked about earlier, they get highlighted for their strengths, and Road Rules says Christian. James specifically gives a shout out to Christian.
Yeah. I don't feel like super surprising picks here. I was glad that no one was like, no, James, it's you. Like, no. Let James be humble for once.
Yeah, I mean, he was certainly humbled over the course of the season, but you know.
Fair enough.
I loved, I will say, the like the casualness of the reunion. And I know that this is like kind of standard, right, for like MTV shows back in the day. I wasn't like a TRL guy. I was truly a little too young for that. But like just like a beanbag on the floor, I feel like that was like a thing, no?
Yeah, I love this. Like, casual vibes. Like, we're cool. We have beanbags. It's very funny. I kind of wish they would season 40. They should have had a bunch of beanbags.
I would have loved it. I'm sure it doesn't work great with audio. You just like hear the rustling of beans in a beanbag in someone's microphone, but it didn't happen here. And
Yeah.
not even just like the beanbags, like some of them were just straight up sitting on the floor.
It's very Love Island.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a fun, unusual vibe, just given how things go today. And of course, everybody's on some couches, and everybody looks great and whatever. This was just very like hanging out in our friend's basement with an audience, rehashing the season.
For
So
sure.
didn't mind it at all. Anything else from you in the notes before our big segment?
No, you know, the reunion was fine. Again, I was surprised that they dragged production so openly. I'm curious to see how the reunions develop. I think that I don't know, it felt like this reunion was closer to today's reunions than like the season is to today's season. So I'm curious to see like how it develops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. We'll be looking forward to that when we get to season 5. But here in season 4, let's start with the season ranking. What are you thinking? How do you feel about season 4 compared to the first 3?
All right. I have my feeling. Do you have a feeling locked in? I'm
I had
curious.
asked you first.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Because my
I do.
feeling
I do.
is I think this is my least favorite season.
Okay, so I agree, but I was thinking through that while I was thinking, like, is that what I think? And I was like, but it doesn't mean I don't like the season. Like, I didn't
No.
not enjoy it. But just like thinking through some of the moments from the earlier three seasons, the highs in those seasons, I think, are just a little bit higher than what we have here. The Road Rules team eventually is just like super dejected the whole time. The Ayana and Christian stuff isn't the most fun. The Rebecca James showmance is like the least exciting showmance of the showmances that we've had in every season so far. Just the least like you care about them so far, and that's the vibe.
For sure, I think that it's so focused on challenges, and I think no one here will be super surprised to hear that's generally our least favorite part of the show. There's very little in terms of character development on this season, and I think that really hurts it. I think for me, it's the weakest, so I would rather watch season one, which like yeah is a completely different show, but at least I feel like I know those people coming out of it, whereas even the people I know the most coming out of this season, I'm relying a lot on what I previously knew about them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that this is the last time that they do this format. I mean, before we get to eliminations, it's like how, like they clearly want it to be bigger, right? They want it to be more episodes, which they are here in this season. You have 18 episodes, including the reunion. They want to, drag things out a little bit more or spread things out a little bit more. But just having the same people and not like a ton of stakes to the point where the Road Rules team again just kind of like throws in the towel and they can't get it together in the real world. It's just like something needed to change, and so the fact that next season is something different, I feel like is pretty fitting for the way that we're feeling about the season.
Yeah,
Again, it didn't not enjoy it, but there was room for improvement. So
I agree. So we're both in agreement. It is currently the fourth season out of four.
yes, and I do believe Mel was in agreement there as well. We'll confirm with her when we talk to her next, but I think
All
that's what she
right.
had said too. So that is that, which of course then brings us to this season's Mount Rushmore. If you're, I don't know, if this is your first season with us, we put together the four names of the season that we think would go on this season's Mount Rushmore. And what do you think? Is this one like, are the picks here as clear as maybe some of the past seasons have been, or
I got a couple clear picks, and then I'm really not sure on that like third, fourth spot, to be
okay?
honest.
Well, generally, you tell me to throw a name out first. So let me jump ahead of that. And I'll say, I feel like the name that we're probably both in agreement on, for better or for worse, is James.
I would agree. James coming away with the most confessionals of the season. I think that he has multiple storylines between him and Rebecca, him being so competitive, whether that be him at his highs of highs, him at his low lows. I think that James is very involved throughout. And so I cannot imagine not putting him on here.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the confessionals. I'm now looking at it myself with his 66 confessionals. Then you have four of the real worlders right after him. And then, like, just a pretty big drop off going from there to get into a mix of the Road Rules team plus Dan and Jamie that are, on the bottom half of the leaderboard there. But James being at the top is not surprising and I think makes a lot of sense. There probably is a pretty clear number two here, and not just because of where they are in the confessionals chart, but do you feel that way as well?
I agree. Yeah, Julie, my number two. I think that honestly, I might have said Julie number one, but maybe that is my like knowledge of Julie, both from her real world season and her future challenge appearances coming in. I think that Julie is such an interesting character, just in like where she comes from, where she goes, like what is she is learning throughout, and her just like thirst for knowledge is like refreshing at this current moment. I don't think it is always handled the best, very clearly, but again, very involved in almost every single part of this season.
We haven't even gotten to, peak Julie content on the challenge, if that's
Peaks or valleys, however you want to look at it.
yeah, exactly. So plenty more to come on those lines. But yeah, the storyline of everything that she had going on back home and how she was handling it in her orbit in the challenge, they were all talking about, this is their vacation from their real life stuff, but it was still an opportunity to reflect on the real life stuff. Like Julie was certainly the biggest character along those lines. And I feel like she kind of just knew like in the moments that she was in there, like, yeah, the real life stuff, like school's not going great, but like I'm in front of a camera and I'm right where I should be. And I can't blame her for feeling that way.
Agreed.
Um, Past James and Julie, it's pretty not as obvious for me. I just want to mention we ruled out again Jamie, Latarian, Susie, Michelle, and Emily. Would you say any of them after the back 6 episodes have re-entered the discussion?
Not for me.
Not even Latarian?
He has like one really good episode, but otherwise, meh.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I agree. He ends up a little bit outside of the ring of consideration, but his big episode, probably 2 big episodes, pulls him, I think, out of that group to the point where he's at least on top of it. But
Yeah.
fair enough to say he's not actually in consideration. But that leaves us with who does well actually who else can we rule out for sure?
Who else could we rule out? I think just having been gone for such a long stretch, unfortunately, I do not think Ayana will be making the Mount Rushmore of the season.
I'm gonna push back on that, but
Tell me more.
let's get back to her.
Okay.
Because I want to like keep ruling people out, but I'm not ruling her out. So
All right,
she's
rule
gonna
someone
stay
out for
in.
me.
I'll give you 2, Dan and Camila.
Okay. I did think about it. I don't think that Camila has enough of her own storyline, unfortunately. I think that she is involved throughout, and I do like her, but I really couldn't tell you much about her, unfortunately, here. Dan, I think, does kind of pop up in storylines quite a bit, but again, kind of as an accessory, as media was wont to do at this time. So I don't know if that's enough to put him up there, but he wasn't quite in the bottom tier either for me.
Yeah, I agree that he definitely gets, some semblance of a story, because it really didn't have a lot to do with many of the other characters outside of like, hey, you're crushing on James, right? Like we all are. It's just like there's not really a lot there. I mean, and we talk about the queer characters on television at this time, and sometimes maybe they want to use that character to tell an emotional story and tell us your coming out story or something, but there wasn't even that. And not to say that he had to make that his story. They just didn't really do much of anything besides show him, struggling in a couple challenges.
Yeah, I would agree. I want to cut a name.
Please do.
Can we cut Rebecca?
Yeah, so that was a name that I was unsure about where we would go. As I said earlier, just because you're in a showman's, does that mean you're in consideration?
She's the third highest confessionalist on the board, but like about what? Like I guess James a whole lot. I don't feel like I know Rebecca as a person. I don't think that I'm going to look back on this season and think of Rebecca honestly. So for me, that is not enough to be on the Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I ultimately have her outside of the 4, but it's probably like at such a close 5, just because even if I'm not like captivated by James and Rebecca as a showman's, it was the story and the through line of the entire season. So I agree. Like, I mean, for James, we got, okay, he's in the showman's, but also like, here's everything about him and his competitive nature and all this stuff. For Rebecca, it was, here's everything about how she feels about James and his competitive nature, which just gave more of the highlight to James, which is unfortunate for Rebecca's sake.
Now, where do you want to cut someone, or you want to propose someone for the?
Do we only have 3 names left?
I think so. I think we're looking at Cyrus, Christian, and you kept Ayana in contention.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you where I'm at right now. I feel like to truly like put this season like in to put the season's Mount Rushmore together. That's what we're doing here. The things that you're going to remember the most from the season, obviously, like there's a lot of unfortunate nature behind what goes on here, but I feel like the Christian Ayana story is really important. Christian gets highlighted a lot as a competitor throughout, so like there's even more going on for him. Ayana, where I was saying I don't think that I was ready to cut her yet, I think I might have her on there because not only do we have this 6 episode arc for her of what she's dealing with in her personal life and why she's out here and the heart that she had out there. Latarian was talking about how it was great to see her like running 8 miles a day and wanting to compete and all this stuff, and she had a lot of heart for the game. And then when she goes, like even the next episode is all about feeling sad that she's not there anymore and wish Christian sad about what happened. And we go to the reunion and we're still talking through Ayana and her story. So to me, I don't know, I just feel like both of them could take these final 2 spots.
I think that's fair. I'm down for that. I think Cyrus, like more present than Ayana, mostly though because he was there for the whole season. He I think comes a little bit alive as a character towards the end, but another person who's a little bit underserved in the edit in terms of like who they are as a person. That's unfortunate. I would like to know more about Cyrus because I know he's a fun person from knowing him from the challenge later on, but we don't get a ton of him here. And as far as like Christian being here, we're going to have people who did very bad things, unfortunately, pop up in a way that I don't think we are going to be able to leave them out of the discussion. So I don't think that like if we're frankly going to talk about the bananas and the Jordans and the the he's and she's who shall not be named of the future, I don't think that they're going to be able to be avoided from the Mount Rushmore. So I think Christian kind of falls under the same principle here.
Yeah, I think, as far as the story in the season is concerned, I really think that these two make the most sense to join James and Julie. And as far as Cyrus is concerned, like we're going to get to, as we go much deeper into this series, we're going to talk about, the Jordans of the world who may not always stand out as like the top pick to go in based on like personality, but of course by competitive nature, he's going to end up there at some point. And Cyrus and Jamie, I guess specifically Cyrus, who has personality that we don't see from Jamie, and also is shown to be one of the stronger competitors, well-rounded across the whole game this season. It's like, well, but if this was a Mount Rushmore purely based on competition and everything, then you definitely can argue a spot for him. And so that's why I guess I'm a little bit sad for him that he's ultimately not going to make it here because he worked hard for it, I guess. But of course we view the show not just as who showed up and dominated type thing at every step of the way. So
agreed.
So that is that. All right, so let's lock it in. James, Julie, Christian, and Ayana. That is very funny that three of the Road Rules team members that did not win the challenge have made it onto the Mount Rushmore of the season.
And usually we're like, do we even give a Road Rules member a spot? Like, but look at this. Road Rules actually has some personality.
Yeah, kind of crazy. All right, Mount Rushmore's overall. To start with the men, as I think we usually do, we are coming in here with from season 1, we still have Eric on the board. We have from season 2, Neil and Jason, and from season 3, we have David. What you thinking?
I would like to propose putting James on the Mount Rushmore.
I don't know if I would say I'd like to agree, but I would agree.
Yeah, I think that James did more in this season than I'm looking at two people here that I could remove.
Get frankly. Jason out of here.
Okay, I will take Jason out of here, but I would also like to talk about, are we putting Christian over Neil?
I definitely think it is possible. We're talking about two people who are really just in this, of course, in their own individual seasons, like the impact that they had there. I feel like we had highlighted Neil a good amount for, a couple of key episodes in his season, whereas I genuinely feel like Christian had character arc throughout the entire way through here. Agreed. So I'm inclined to say yes.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I think the two guys from I would say I like the two guys from season 2 more than I like these guys from season 4. But I think that while very few people got like actual storyline on this season of the challenge, I would say Christian and James are two of the only people I come away feeling like I know them at all.
Yeah, definitely feel you on that. I'm just like looking to see if would anybody else. I mean, because we can still look deeper into this the men on this season if we wanted to replace anybody else. We were talking about Cyrus. Is there a world where Cyrus swaps out with a David or an Eric?
For me, no. I think David and Eric are my firm like 2 spots on this anyway. Like if Cyrus can't beat Christian, then I don't think he's beating David or Eric, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think that's where I'm at too. Just, double checking the vibe here. Because other than that, I mean, you have Dan, we already talked about. I think that's probably gonna put us at the final spot for closing out the men for now.
All right. Now the all-time women's Mount Rushmore currently stand Cynthia still on there from season 1. Montana and Beth have held their spots ever since season 2, and Heather B joined last season in season 3, taking Rachel's spot. Where are we going?
So we know we're adding Julie, right? That's
Julie's definitely on this board for me.
Julie's on the board. I think I know who I'm replacing her with, but I also feel like there may be one or two others that are so close to having to come off at a certain point. I would say I'm leaning Julie swaps out with Beth.
Oh, I'm glad we're in agreement.
You didn't think I was going to say that?
I thought you were going to say Montana. I was worried that the future legacy of Beth may impact things, but I think Montana was the bigger character on the original season that Montana and Beth both appeared on. So I am glad to see that we are in agreement. Julie takes Beth's spot, but when it comes down to now Montana versus Ayana, I think Montana deserves her spot still.
You're not even thinking about Cynthia or Heather B dropping off?
No.
I would say I'm not thinking about Heather B dropping off, but I'm not sure where I'm at with Cynthia. I think as of right now, I mean, the next highest woman on the board here obviously is Ayana. She was on the Mount Rushmore of the season. And I don't know. There's nobody else I think that we're considering from season 4 besides Ayana. Yeah, I think Heather B had such a strong showing last season, so I would leave her. Montana, same thing in season 2. Cynthia, I'm just like, again, it's like about in their individual seasons, like what their story was and how much they added to the show. And I feel like Cynthia was such a bright spot in that first season that I enjoyed her a lot. But that's kind of where I'm looking at, is like I feel like she's going to drop off at some point, so I'm wondering when. And Ayana had such a compelling story here, and Ayana was on one more episode than Cynthia was.
Oh no.
I don't know. I think I might feel like that makes sense. I mean, I'm not like locked in on it by any means, but like, what do you think between those two? Are you like firmly anti making that kind of swap?
Yeah, I'm pretty firmly. I think that Cynthia was like the bright spot of season 1 for me, where, yeah, like Eric, I think probably is the character that has the most surrounding him in season 1. I think Cynthia is consistently funny, consistently involved. She is great for commentary, great for narration. I think that she, has her fears in the daily challenges. I just think that Cynthia ultimately ended up mattering more to the season, unfortunately, for Ayana. But I don't know. I personally lean Cynthia for now.
It's tough. I'm like, I know it sounded like a joke, and it kind of was, but like Ayana had more episodes.
No,
But not only, the 6 episodes that she was on before she is told she has to leave, but then the next episode again, where it's like, we're still like hearing the fallout of all of the different players and how they felt about her exit, and then going to the reunion where we get time to highlight it. And just with that dilemma, that situation with Christian being so important for both of them in the season, I feel like I'm going to think back on Extreme Challenge and think of the two of them, maybe even before I think of James and Julie, just because their storyline was tied together, and so many other people on the season didn't really have that. I mean, I'm not upset if you really feel firmly about leaving Cynthia there for now. But I think if it was just my decision, I'd probably make that swap.
I feel pretty firmly. Part of me is like, do we keep this between us? Do we ask Mel when she jumps in on the next episode? Do we think about it and come back?
Tiebreaker? I think we're allowed to change it even on the.
Do we call the tiebreaker in?
Sure. I mean, we're going to be doing this very soon anyway.
Yeah. So,
I'm fine with that. Leave a
I'm not
cliffhanger
opposed.
here.
You can give her thoughts on the episode.
Sure.
Deal.
So tune in next week, or not next week, later this week, as we will have Mel break the tie between Cynthia and Ayana to complete the Mount Rushmore through 4 seasons. And
I love this because Mel is going to be joining us for the first episode for at least quite a stretch. So we could run into scenarios where we have a little tiebreaker more than once, I could say.
A lot of tiebreakers needed, cliffhangers coming your way, which I'm sure we all love a cliffhanger. That's not true. But yeah, we'll see how that works for the meantime, especially if we're just both feeling the way that we're feeling right now about who should be in this final spot. But I think that's going to do it for now, unless you have anything else.
No, I feel good about wrapping up the season here. I'm very excited to jump into season 5, see what it looks like when we actually have eliminations in a season. So that is very exciting. And otherwise, just still very much into this project.
Yeah, the rundown of who is back next season. I'm sure we'll do this again at
Ooh,
the top of the next episode. From season 1, we do have both John Brennan and Sean Duffy back.
yay.
And Eric, Mount Rushmore's own Eric, is back as the host of the season alongside season 2's Mark Long, both co-hosting the season.
Okay.
Excited to see what that is.
Happier
Beth,
about that.
did you say you heard about that?
I said I'm happier about that.
Yes. Than some of the other names so far.
Yes.
Beth was just knocked off the Mount Rushmore, but we'll see if she can hop back onto it because Beth is back. And then I already talked about Emily is back from this season, but season 3, a handful of names are back. We have Mike, standout Mike. We have Veronica, Dan, and Holly both back, as well as Piggy in the next season.
Ooh. Well, I liked season 3 quite a bit, so I'm very excited.
Yes, plus a couple of names from other real world road rule seasons that have not yet made their debut on the challenge. So that should all be a lot of fun. Of course, that will be out if you're listening to this on the main feed in 2 days' time. If you're listening to this on Patreon, I don't know, maybe a day after you're listening to, timelines. But so that's the deal. Of course, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/the Free Agents Podcast for all of our bonus content, all of these episodes ad free and early and all that fun stuff. Scally, what else?
I don't know. I'm on Twitter at Brian_Scally. I'm on Twitch at twitch.tv/bscally. Blue Sky at Brian Scally with all the other stuff. And if you're enjoying the series so far, throw a 5-star review. We are getting close to season 41, or closer, should I say. And this project has been growing and growing, very much motivating to see a 5-star review, especially specifically talking about this project. So if you're enjoying it and want it to keep going, let us know.
Yeah, please do. Always appreciate the feedback. 5-star reviews welcomed in the Apple podcast feed.
Required.
Spotify required, actually, in the Spotify feed. Otherwise, I don't know, maybe the Mount Rushmore just gets, dissipated. It's altogether, it's done. It's gone. But we don't want that. So that's the deal. Check me out on all social medias if you're looking for me at Matt Ligori. The podcast is, of course, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, all those places. Look in the episode description if you're looking for specific links. And check me out on the Diary Room podcast with Amon Adwin talking Big Brother. If you want to, if you're enjoying, the walkthrough history of the challenge, we walk through the history of Big Brother over there. So that is my plug. And I think that that's going to do it for today. We'll be back with season 5 of the challenge, Battle of the Seasons. We'll get into the first, I believe, 5 episodes with Mel returning with us, and she'll break the tie on the Mount Rushmore very, very soon. But until then, take care, and we hope to see you all in the future.